Karoline Leavitt stood tall, her posture unyielding as she faced the row of reporters, each one eager to pry into the latest controversy. Her eyes were calm, but there was a fire in them, a determination that had become her trademark since her appointment as White House press secretary. Dear listeners, before we move forward, please subscribe my channel to hit 1,000 figure. The room fell into an expectant silence, the hum of phones and soft murmurs fading into the background. Karoline had been in the public eye long enough to know that her answers would be scrutinized like never before. But she was prepared. She had spent hours with the president and senior staff, getting the details just right. She knew the narrative she had to sell, and she wasn't about to let it slip through her fingers. Good afternoon, she began, her voice clear and confident. I know you're all eager for answers, so let me start by addressing the president's announcement earlier today. She paused for effect, letting the weight of the moment hang in the air. Reporters shifted, jotting down notes, their pens hovering as they waited for the first real words of the day. As you all know, Karoline continued, President Trump has announced a new series of tariffs aimed at Canadian imports. This move is part of our broader strategy to level the playing field and ensure that American businesses and workers are put first. For too long, we've been at a disadvantage, and these tariffs will help bring fairness back to trade. The room was still. Karoline could feel the eyes of every reporter on her, searching for a slip, a crack in her armor. She wasn't naive. She knew the questions would come fast and hard, but she was ready. A reporter in the front row raised their hand, and Karoline nodded in their direction. Yes, go ahead. Karoline, with all due respect. The reporter began. Many economists are warning that these tariffs could backfire, potentially leading to higher prices for consumers. How do you respond to that? Karoline's gaze didn't waver. She had anticipated this question, and she was ready with an answer that wouldn't just deflect, it would counter. Let's be clear, she said, her tone firm. The president's priority is the American worker. These tariffs are designed to protect our industries from unfair foreign competition. The president understands that in the short term, there may be some adjustments, but in the long term, we believe this will strengthen our economy and create jobs, not cost them. And remember, this is just the beginning. This administration is committed to ensuring that our country's prosperity is built from the ground up, with American-made products and American labor at the forefront. The reporter frowned, but scribbled down her response, clearly trying to piece together her argument. Another hand shot up from the other side of the room. Karoline nodded again. Yes, go ahead. The next reporter asked, but Karoline, what about the Canadian response? They've already threatened retaliatory tariffs. Aren't you worried this could escalate into a trade war? Karoline straightened, her eyes narrowing slightly. The president has made it clear from the start, America will no longer be taken advantage of. If Canada chooses to retaliate, that's their decision. But we're not backing down. We're standing up for American interests, and that's what matters most. We hope Canada will come to the table and negotiate, but we're prepared for whatever comes next. There was a slight murmur in the room. Karoline could feel the tension building. She knew this was a delicate moment, but she wasn't going to back down. She'd been trained to face storms head on, and this was no different. Another reporter piped up, but Karoline, isn't this a risky strategy? The timing seems off, especially with the ongoing trade negotiations with China and the global economic uncertainty. Are you worried this might backfire? Karoline didn't flinch. She leaned in, her voice steady but powerful. There's no such thing as the perfect time to take bold action. The president doesn't walk away from hard decisions. he or in them. This is about securing America's future. If we don't act now, we risk allowing foreign powers to continue exploiting our workers. The global economy is unpredictable, yes, but America's strength lies in our resolve. We'll deal with any challenges that arise just as we've done time and time again. She paused, her eyes scanning the room, and then delivered the final blow. This isn't about the next few weeks or even the next few months. This is about the next few decades. The president is focused on ensuring that America is competitive on the global stage, not just today, but for generations to come. The room was quiet for a moment. Karoline could see the reporters, some nodding, others furiously typing, trying to capture her words in the limited space they had. She had stood her ground, and the narrative had already begun to shift in her favor. Another reporter raised their hand, but Karoline knew that she had made her point. She had taken the first volley, and she had answered with precision. The press corps would have their questions, but for now the ball was in her court. "Any more questions?" she asked, her voice calm, confident, and unyielding. The room hesitated for a split second before another barrage of inquiries began. But Karoline Leavitt, the new press secretary, had already proven that she was more than up to the task. She was ready for whatever came next. A reporter from the New York Times raised their hand, their expression skeptical. "Ms. Leavitt, with all due respect, many economists have warned that these tariffs could raise costs for American consumers, particularly in sectors like electronics and automobiles. How do you reconcile that with the president's promises to help American families?" Karoline didn't hesitate. She had anticipated this line of questioning, and she was ready. "We understand that any change can bring short-term challenges, but the president is focused on the long-term benefits for the American economy. These tariffs are a part of a broader strategy to reassert American strength in global trade. The goal is not just to protect American workers today, but to ensure that American industries are competitive in the future." A pause followed as reporters scribbled down her words. The tension in the room was palpable, but Karoline remained composed. "Let's be clear," she continued, her voice steady. "We believe that in the long run, these tariffs will help reinvigorate American manufacturing. When American manufacturers thrive, it creates jobs. Those jobs lead to more consumers and ultimately a stronger economy. In the short term, there may be some adjustments, but the bigger picture's worth it." She paused, her eyes scanning the room, and then shifted the conversation. "And let's not forget, this isn't just about Canada. The president's focus is on creating a fairer global playing field for American industries. This is about ensuring and working that our country can compete on equal footing with countries that have exploited our labor force for too long." A reporter from Reuters raised their hand, clearly eager to challenge her. "But Ms. Leavitt, some critics are saying that these tariffs could strain relationships with our closest trading partners, including Canada, and disrupt the flow of goods that rely on cross-border trade. Isn't that a concern?" Karoline responded without skipping a beat. "The president has always said that his primary responsibility is to protect American workers. If that means standing up to even our closest allies to ensure that the American economy isn't undercut by unfair trade practices, so be it. We're committed to building strong relationships with our allies, but we're also committed to making sure that our trade policies are fair, balanced, and beneficial for the American people." Another hand shot up, and this time, it was a reporter from Fox News. "Ms. Leavitt, you've emphasized fairness in the president's trade policy, but there are concerns that this could lead to more economic uncertainty, particularly for the agriculture sector, which is heavily reliant on exports to Canada. How does the president plan to mitigate that risk?" Karoline's expression softened ever so slightly, but her resolve remained firm. "The president is very aware of the importance of agriculture in our economy. We're in active discussions with our agricultural partners and working on solutions that will protect American farmers from any negative consequences of these tariffs. The president is focused on ensuring that our agricultural sector remains competitive and that American products continue to reach global markets. She paused for a moment, giving the reporters a chance to absorb her words before adding, "The president has always been a champion of American workers, whether they are in manufacturing, agriculture, or any other sector. This is about securing long-term prosperity for all Americans, and sometimes that requires making difficult decisions." The room was quiet for a moment. Reporters exchanged glances, clearly processing her answers. Karoline could feel the weight of their scrutiny, but she was unfazed. She knew that her job wasn't to make everyone happy. It was to steer the narrative, stand by the president's decisions, and maintain control of the room. And that's exactly what she was doing. A reporter from Politico raised their hand, their voice cutting through the silence. "But, Ms. Leavitt, many argue that the president is isolating allies at a time when global cooperation is more important than ever. Are you concerned that these moves might damage America's standing in the world?" Karoline leaned forward slightly, her gaze intense. The president's vision for America is one of strength. He believes that America's power comes from its independence, its ability to stand up for self, and its capacity to forge strong, mutually beneficial relationships. This administration is not about being liked. It's about being respected. And that means making tough decisions that put American interests first. She glanced around the room, locking eyes with a few reporters who were scribbling down her words. "Yes, we want strong alliances. But the president has always been clear. Alliances should be built on mutual respect, not on allowing our interest to be trampled." With that, Karoline paused, allowing the weight of her words to sink in. The room was silent now, and she knew she had made her point. The reporters were still processing her answers, but Karoline had already shifted the narrative. She had successfully turned the tables and reclaimed control of the press briefing. Now, all she had to do was hold her ground. "Any more questions?" she asked, her voice calm but firm, ready for whatever came next. The press room was electric with energy, the stakes higher than ever, but Karoline Leavitt had proven that she was not just a spokeswoman, she was a force to be reckoned with. Karoline didn't flinch. She had anticipated the pressure, the push for a crack in her armor. This was the White House press briefing room. If you couldn't handle the heat, you didn't belong. A reporter from the Washington Post raised their hand, a sharp glint in their eye. "Ms. Leavitt, by focusing on tariffs, the president seems to be ignoring other critical issues like healthcare, climate change, and the pandemic recovery. How do you respond to those who feel that the administration's priorities are misaligned?" Karoline's eyes flickered for just a second, but her tone remained steady. "The president is focused on the American worker and the American economy. That's his top priority, because if our economy is strong, we can invest in the future. We can address healthcare, climate change, and recovery, things that are important to the American people, through a prosperous, growing economy. Tariffs are one tool in a broader strategy to ensure long-term national strength. We are working across all sectors to improve the lives of Americans, but we must start with protecting jobs and industries that have been neglected for too long." A reporter from Bloomberg jumped in immediately, eager to dig deeper. "But isn't there a risk that the president's economic policies might isolate the U.S. from key allies, including the European Union, which has already expressed concern about the new tariffs? How does the administration plan to manage the fallout from these strained relationships?" Karoline leaned forward slightly, eyes scanning the room with the confidence of someone who knew exactly how to navigate the situation. This administration believes in strengthening America's position in the world, not through appeasement, but through leadership. The president is committed to ensuring that America is respected in trade and diplomacy. We are open to dialogue with our allies, but our first duty is to ensure fairness for American workers. We're not going to let unfair trade practices continue at the expense of American families. Our stance may create some friction in the short term, but in the long run, we believe our partners will respect our commitment to fairness. She could sense the change in the room. The questioning had become more probing. The reporters eager for her to slip, to show a crack, but Karoline Leavitt was not about to back down. The Los Angeles Times reporter chimed in next, her voice sharp and critical. Ms. Leavitt, what do you say to those who argue that the president's actions are alienating the very people he promised to help, the working class, who will ultimately bear the brunt of higher prices? Will they really benefit from these tariffs in the long run? Karoline took a breath. This was the heart of the matter. We are absolutely committed to helping the working class. The president's policies are designed to ensure that American businesses thrive, which creates more jobs and opportunities for working families. Tariffs are a tool, not the end-all be-all. The real work is about bringing jobs back to America, rebuilding manufacturing, and creating a self-sustaining economy that doesn't rely on cheap labor abroad. These policies may not yield overnight results, but we're focused on the future, and it's a future where American workers aren't left behind.
The room fell silent for a moment as the reporters scribbled notes, absorbing her words. She had answered the tough questions, but Karoline could feel the shift in the room. There was still skepticism, but also respect. They weren't going to let her off easy, but they were beginning to see that she wasn't easily rattled either. Just as another hand shot up, Karoline was ready for more. This was her moment. She was proving to everyone that she wasn't just a press secretary. She was a formidable force in the battle of ideas. A young reporter from Axios asked, Ms. Leavitt, given the stakes of this trade policy, how confident is the White House that this approach will work? What metrics or indicators will be used to evaluate its success? Karoline smiled slightly, her eyes meeting the reporters with unwavering confidence. The president's team is constantly monitoring the impact of all our policies, tariffs included. We'll be watching job numbers, wages, manufacturing output, and overall economic growth. But success isn't just about immediate results. It's about long-term sustainable growth. We're focused on rebuilding our industries and reasserting American dominance in global trade. The metrics are clear: more jobs, better wages, and a thriving economy. Her words hung in the air, strong and definitive. As the final questions came in, Karoline knew that this press briefing was not just a routine event. It was a battle of narratives, and she had won this round. A reporter from NBC News raised a brow, clearly sensing a vulnerability in Karoline's answer. Ms. Leavitt, while you've pointed out the positive effects of tariffs on manufacturing, many experts argue that the short-term pain for consumers, rising prices on everyday goods, could outweigh the long-term benefits. How does the administration plan to mitigate this? Karoline didn't flinch. Her voice remained calm, yet firm. The president has been clear. The American economy has been undercut for too long by unfair practices from foreign markets. Yes, there will be short-term disruptions, but this is about investing in our future, raising wages, creating jobs, and ensuring that American manufacturing doesn't just survive, but thrives. She paused, letting the weight of her words settle. We will see more American-made products on store shelves, which means more American jobs and stronger wages. The bottom line is, we are building a stronger, more resilient economy. Another hand shot up, this time from Reuters. Ms. Leavitt, if this policy turns out to backfire, will the administration reconsider or revise the tariffs, Or is the White House committed to doubling down no matter the outcome? The question was sharp, but Karoline was prepared. The president is committed to making decisions that benefit the American people, not based on political popularity or immediate outcomes. This administration is focused on sustainable, long-term growth. If we see negative effects, we will address them. But what we will not do is abandon policies that protect American workers. The room murmured. Some reporters were still skeptical, others impressed with her poise. But Karoline could see that she had made her point. This wasn't about political gain or temporary measures. It was about something bigger, the long-term health of the American economy. Then a Politico reporter spoke up, offering a more direct challenge. But Ms. Leavitt, what do you say to critics who argue that the tariffs could hurt U.S. consumers more than foreign markets? If American goods become more expensive, won't that harm everyday people, especially those in low-income households? Karoline took a breath, sensing the shift in tone. The question was significant, but she had an answer. The president's policies are designed to raise the standard of living for American workers, not by artificially suppressing wages or importing cheaper goods, but by investing in jobs, businesses, and innovation. By reducing our dependency on cheap foreign labor, we're fostering an environment where Americans can thrive. This isn't about short-term pain. It's about future prosperity for all. The tension in the room was palpable. Reporters were taking notes quickly, eyes darting between Karoline and one another, considering her responses. There was still skepticism, of course. There would always be. But Karoline's confidence was evident. She wasn't just speaking in sound bites or cliches. She had prepared for this, and she was delivering. As the final question came from a CBS News correspondent, Karoline knew the press would have their doubts, and tomorrow's headlines would certainly be divided. But that was part of the game. The president's agenda was clear, and Karoline had laid out the case. Well, Ms. Leavitt, the CBS reporter began, it's clear that the tariffs are designed to protect American industries. But what about the global stage? Is the president concerned that this approach might alienate other allies who rely on free trade agreements? Karoline smiled politely, but her voice was firm. This administration's primary concern is the well-being of American workers. The president believes that strong, fair trade benefits everyone in the long run. We're not interested in weakening our relationships with allies, but we will no longer tolerate unfair trade practices. The world respects strength, and the United States is standing strong. As the briefing ended, Karoline walked off the podium, her heart still pounding with the adrenaline of the moment. She had held the line, not just for the administration, but for the vision they had laid out. The room buzzed with conversation, reporters still discussing her responses, eager to break down every word, every nuance. But Karoline didn't need to watch. She had said what needed to be said. And today, the White House had won the battle for the narrative.